is Authentic Parenting, a podcast about personal development in the context of parenting, where I explore how you can find more calm, connection, and joy in parenting through the process of self-discovery and inner growth with a trauma-informed lens. I'm a parent educator, and my mission is to help children by helping parents. The motto of this podcast is raising our children, growing ourselves. Today, 13 reasons why your kids don't listen and what to do about each one. If I were to ask you a question right now, what do you find most challenging when it comes to your kids and parenting? Many of you will say, when my kids don't listen. I have found that to be true in my work with parents over the years. For sure, the number one question I get is, how can I get my kids to listen? If you ask me, my kid doesn't listen is a loaded term. It's an umbrella term. It encompasses a lot of little behaviors, and it goes beyond the simple act of listening. I suggest flipping the question and asking a better one, a more useful question. We need to change the way we look at our children's behavior. Ask better, more useful questions instead of moving through parenting on autopilot. I am speaking with Jen Lumanlan, a returning guest, a friend, a mother, a colleague, and a fellow podcaster. Jen is the host of Your Parenting Mojo podcast, which uses scientific research to understand parenting and child development. After attending Berkeley and Yale and following a traditional career path, Jen found that parenting was her toughest challenge yet. She went back to school for a master's in psychology/child development and another in education, and trained as a co-active coach. Jen offers courses, memberships, and her first book will be published in August of 2023 and is tentatively titled, "This book will make parenting easy, and it might also change the world, reimagining discipline for connection, healing, and social justice." We took a deep dive into the many reasons why children don't listen, offered explanations and suggestions on exactly what to do about each one. It's a super practical and helpful episode, and I hope you will find it valuable. Please enjoy. Jen, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. It's great to be back with you.
Yes, I am excited to speak with you again after a long time. Years, I guess, 4 or 5 years, I would say.
You're older now.
Yeah, we've both grown and we're still doing our own individual podcasts. So this is wonderful. And we do share common listenerships. We have the same listeners, not all of them, obviously, but a good chunk of people. Definitely. So today we want to talk about a very hot topic, and parents usually come to me, to you, or to anyone else in the parenting world. Help, my kid is not listening to me. I mean, if I only had $1, how many times I heard that phrase, I would be a millionaire. But what do you think is going on when a parent is saying that my child is not listening to me?
Yeah, I think there's so much underneath that that statement that comes from a parent. And maybe 20 years ago, the parent might have said something like, my child won't do what I tell them to do. And we've sort of begun to culturally shift a little bit how we see children, how we see our relationships with our children. And so the language has shifted a little bit, but really the underlying idea is the same, which is why doesn't my child listen to me is sort of code for why doesn't my child do what I want them to do. And I think that what's underneath that is the way that we were trained by our own parents to do what our parents wanted us to do. And there was no other option for that, right? There was no opportunity to say, well, actually, I have feelings and needs, and I would like for those to be taken into account. I don't know if you could ever imagine saying that to your parents, but I would never have said it to mine. And so we kind of learned to, quote unquote, listen to our parents. And now it seems like, well, the thing that good parents do is they get their kids to listen. They get their kids to do what they're supposed to do. And if I could just do that, then my life would be easier. And we all want that as parents, right? I can really feel into that need for ease that we have as parents. And it seems like that's the one path to getting there, when actually I think there are multiple other paths that we can use to get to that place of ease that we're all seeking as parents.
Yeah. I agree with that completely. And I learned to reframe it for my clients specifically. When I'm working with someone and someone says, my child is not listening, I say, how about instead of saying my child is not listening, say, I am feeling powerless in this moment. I'm feeling helpless, because it's about you ultimately. You know, your child is listening. They're hearing you. It goes from one ear and gets out the other. What you're really saying, person, is I want to have control over my child, over this situation, so that it will be easy for me. And why isn't life easy for you? Well, because we live in this culture, right? In this do, go. You're overbooked, you're tired. And of course, when your child wants to assert themselves or they want to pursue something of their own, you want that ease, that feeling. And it's so great as a parent, right? I mean, how many times have you felt when your child just smoothly cooperates? You're like, oh God, why can't this last forever, this feeling? Why can't we get to this place all the time? Unfortunately, that's not the case. And you have highlighted 13 fantastic reasons why children don't listen to their parents. And I want to go over the 13 reasons one by one.
And before we do that, I wonder if I can just say a word about control, right? And we feel as though we have this need for control, that if I'm in control, then things will be easier. And what I see so often is that the need for control is just kind of masking something that's underneath, right? It's very often a fear of something that will happen, something that won't happen, a fear that if I don't get my child to do this now, then they will never learn how to do it, that they won't be a successful grown-up, that we sort of go into this catastrophizing, or this fear that, well, I won't get my needs met. I won't be able to do what I want to do. And so we sort of put this control, this veneer of control over our interactions with our children, thinking if I can just be in control, then everything will be okay. And we're kind of white knuckling through these interactions with our children, right? Because nobody likes to be controlled. We don't like to be controlled. Our children don't like to be controlled. And so when we can strip that away and see what's really underneath there, then we can help both parents and children to see what are our real needs here and how can we actually get those needs met, so that I don't, quote unquote, need to have that control that I thought I needed to have.
Yeah, I completely agree. And examining that, the moment you start feeling that your child is not listening to you, I think it's a good moment to examine, why am I being so tight and why am I needing to control my child or things? I think it's usually a good indication to do a little self-examination, whether it's a fear, like you said. I had a client recently who forces her 11-year-old to sit there so she can do her hair for school. Well, now, like for me, I never combed my daughter's hair. I never done my daughter's hair. And I never cared if it was messy or, perfectly combed. But this woman does. And when we, and it's a source of conflict in the morning, obviously, right? The daughter does not want the mother, first of all, to do her hair. And I said, why do you care? Like, why do you worry so much about this task? And it was a whole slew of things that came up. She grew up in a foster care system. She didn't have her own hygiene products and things of this. There was a whole lot of things tied to this one ritual, this controlling technique that she was applying to her daughter. And once we analyzed and talked about it, and she said one statement, what would other people think about me if I send my daughter like that to school? What would they think? And so when you go level by level and examine, the next time we met, she said, you know what? She goes to school however she wants. I don't even care anymore. No. It's not about you not caring. You can still care, but let that go. That control that you have is telling you something about you. I think it's an important aspect, whether it's a fear or whether you're stressed, right? And you need to control things to feel in control. Oftentimes when things fall apart, you're reaching to control, like during the pandemic, we were tidying up and organizing nonstop, those of us who needed a sense of order.
Yeah. And I think it's important to acknowledge on the hair front is that, you and I are both white parents, relatively privileged, and that some parents, I'm thinking of Black parents, don't have the luxury of being able to send their child to school looking however the child wakes up, right? Because a quote unquote well-meaning white teacher or parent may call Child Protective Services because this child is not being taken care of. So I think that absolutely we need to be looking at these reasons that we can see within ourselves, that we can heal from, and also acknowledge that it is our failure as white people, that there are people who cannot fully let go of this stuff and who cannot fully heal and allow their children to show up at school in whatever way they want, because it's not safe. And that's a massive failure on our part.
Yeah, valid point. Completely. Thanks for bringing that up. And FYI, this woman is white and her child is white. I never even thought about that. Yeah. So your daughter is now 8.5 years old. And do you ever say to yourself, why is my child not listening to me? Because I say that sometimes, even though I do this work, I don't say it out loud, or it's the reason I'm saying that is so ingrained in us. It's so conditioned that it's hard to even break that language, the pattern, that the way we speak. Even though I know it's not about her not listening, I still use that kind of language. How about you?
I don't think I do, actually. And I have never thought about that before. And I'm trying to understand why. It's not that I don't get frustrated. Absolutely, I get frustrated still. But it doesn't seem to come from that why aren't you listening to me place. And I'm not sure if it's because of all of the learning and healing I've done myself, or other reasons. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I do get frustrated, obviously, by my child too. And sometimes I would say, why can't she just like do what I say? Sometimes it's so easy. It would be so easy in my mind. But I think saying that statement to our kids is harmful too. What do you think of that? When a parent constantly says, you never listen, you're not listening to me. Like, how does the child feel?
Well, I mean, I think we can understand that a little bit if we were to imagine what it would be like to be in a relationship with an adult who would say that to us, right? If we have a partner and I don't know, we didn't unload the dishwasher first thing this morning, and our partner comes out of the bedroom and says, "You didn't unload the dishwasher again. You never listened to me." Right? We can start to get a sense for, oh, that's what it might be like to be on the receiving end of something like that. And so I think children don't necessarily have the language to fully process what they are thinking and feeling when we are saying that. But what I think they're intrinsically sort of, deep down, maybe non-verbally thinking and feeling is, my parent doesn't care what is the reason why I am not doing this thing. My parent only cares that this thing gets done or not done, whatever, if we're telling them to do something or not do something. And I have reasons why I'm doing or not doing this thing. And nobody cares what those reasons are.
Yeah, I agree. And it creates disconnection. And so that brings me to your fantastic list of 13 reasons why your child doesn't listen. And the number one reason you have here is your child feels disconnected. Can you open that up and offer an alternative, perhaps?
Yeah. If we try and imagine, why is my child not listening to me? we very often draw a blank. I think it's like, well, I don't know why my child isn't listening to me. And so that was sort of the reason that I put this cheat sheet together, was to unpack a whole bunch of these reasons. And yeah, the first is the child is feeling disconnected. And we might think, whoa, my child isn't listening to me because they feel disconnected. Like, how are those two things related? Well, if you think about, again, bring this to a relationship that you have with another adult. If you're feeling disconnected from that person and they ask you to do something, maybe even something that's a favor for them, are you feeling as though you want to do something that helps them, that makes their life easier? Possibly not. And so the ways that we gain connection with other adults is maybe a little different than we do it with children. But what we can do then with our children is to start rebuilding that connection in a way that really resonates with the child. And I think that that's super important. Very often we try to give love to other people in the way that we want to receive it, right? So if our way of receiving love is kind of loving words and affirmations, then we start giving that to our child. But maybe our child's way of receiving love is touch or something else. And so if we try and use loving words, they're like, yeah, I'm still not feeling connected. But if we can really connect with them in the way that they want to be connected with, then we can actually start to build that connection. And then when we ask them to do something, there isn't that natural, sort of pulling away of, no, why would I want to do something for you? It's kind of, yeah, I feel connected to you and I want to help you because I see that you're also wanting to help me.
Yeah, excellent point. Can we move to the second one? Your child doesn't want to stop what they are doing. Valid point, right?
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah. I mean, how often are you in the middle of watching a TV show or something and your partner says, hey, can you do this thing for me? And you're like, can you not see that I'm busy? I'll be working, heads down in the middle of doing something really important. And my husband will be like, what do you think about X? And seriously? I was midstream and you're interrupting me to talk about something completely irrelevant. And so we find this super hard as well. And our children are people too. I think we can sometimes find it hard to imagine that our children can have similar thoughts and feelings that we do. And so they don't like to be interrupted either. So maybe we could wait for a more natural breaking point in what they're doing. Oh, it looks like you're coming to the end of an episode, or it looks like you're almost done building your structure. Are you ready to do whatever? Rather than kind of leaping in and expecting them to jump right out of whatever they're doing.
I know. Do your homework right now and in the manner, the way I demand in this location, or it's like, oh, wow. And I think that's, again, I can't harp on this enough. When a parent comes from that place, when the parent comes home after work and the first thing they say, did you practice your piano? Did you do your homework? Before connecting, before relaxing, changing their clothes, eating dinner, that's an indication that maybe you need to take a break. You need to pause. You're too overwhelmed, stressed out, that you are reaching for control. Why are you reaching for control? Yes, the homework is important too. I'm not advocating here for neglectful parenting, right? We do want our children.
That would be a different podcast.
Yes, we do want our children to do their homework, to help around the house, to participate in certain things. We completely want that. We want their cooperation, but control is not the way to elicit that.
Yeah. And if that is the first question out of your mouth, right, that tells your child something about what's most important to you. The homework is most important to you. Whether you've done practice is most important to you. Is that really, really what's most important to you? Could it actually be my connection with my child is the most important thing to me? And if so, maybe I want to go in with a hug, with not tell me 50 things about your day, but just even a nonverbal connection, so that you're rebuilding that relationship, which experienced a little bit of a rupture during the day. You're coming back together again. You're saying, I'm important to you, and you're important to me. And from there, then we'll talk about all the other stuff. But primarily, this is about the relationship.
Yeah, I agree. And the list that list that you mentioned, like oftentimes people post on social media, 32 things to ask your children after school. I hate those lists. I'm like, would you leave them alone after school? Like they need to decompress. I mean, imagine you came after work, you come in and your wife or your husband, your partner is like, tell me about your day. So what was the best part of your day? Who did you play with? Who did you work with? It's like, would you shut up? It's like, that's what I would say. My daughter is old enough now, she's 14. She came from school yesterday and we had to run an errand together. And she's like, Mom, I can't wait to tell you what happened today at school, but not now, Mom. After we eat, after we do this, like she's planning ahead of time as an older kid. And I'm like, no, tell me, I want to know. She's like, no, Mom. When we do all of this, I can't wait to tell you. I'm like, wow, you do have to wait until they're ready, they decompressed. And also, haranguing them with questions is again a form of control because you want to know, did you eat your lunch? Did you play with kids? Basically, you want to hear an okay that you did great, your child did great. Oh, I can have that sense of ease and relax into my day. Again, it's ultimately about your feeling of control, ease, or comfort. I think it's about that. Yeah. So number 3. Oh, your child didn't hear you. A valid point completely.
It's possible.
It's possible, yes.
If you're shouting from the other end of the house, or if they're in a different room from you and you're shouting loud enough that they, quote unquote, should be able to hear, but they're engrossed in something, right? My husband has a miraculous ability to not hear anything that's going on around him. My daughter can ask for food 3 times and he's like, has she eaten yet? And yes, she asked for food and I got it for her and he didn't even realize it. So yes, we can't assume that the child has heard us. So making eye contact, making sure that the request was heard and received is an overlooked, but I think really important step.
I agree. Your child doesn't have a complete grasp of time, a huge one again, right?
Yeah. Right. And this really, really starts to get into the, my child isn't listening, but that's not really what's happening. They heard, but they can't understand that we have 30 minutes until it's time to go to school or preschool, and how to manage the activities that they're doing within that time. And we're like, but we do it every day. Why is this so hard? Because they don't have fully developed brains yet. So if they can't fully understand how long 30 minutes is, then it's going to be really hard for them to budget that time accordingly and get the task done. So it's not that they aren't listening, it's just that they haven't yet fully grasped all of the skills that they need to be able to do the things that you're asking them to do. So you can use a visual timer. You can do things like allotting specific time slots to specific tasks. You can help them to understand how long a minute is by, when you say, I'll be there in a minute, that doesn't mean I'm actually going to sit here and sneak in another 10 minutes worth of work. This is actually a minute. And that helps them to understand what a minute is. So we're scaffolding their ability to understand time and also not expecting them to do things that they're not developmentally capable of doing yet.
Yes, agreed. Number 5, your child doesn't want to do the task. Yeah. Oh, really? They have desires and needs and wants.
Fancy that, eh?
Yeah. Or maybe they're not in a mood, or maybe they're even sick. They're not feeling well, right? No, you got to do it, and you better do it now to satisfy me.
Yeah. And so often there's a reason why the child doesn't want to do the task, that if we just knew what that reason was, we would be so willing to accommodate it. And I did an interview with a parent on the Your Parenting Mojo podcast a year or so ago, and she'd just been having these endless struggles with her child every morning. Get dressed, no. Get dressed, no. Just there's nowhere to go from this, right? The child needs to get dressed. I think as the parent, well, clearly the thing that needs to happen here is you need to get dressed. Your behavior needs to change. It's not my behavior that needs to change. And then one morning after we'd worked together for a while, the parent said, why don't you want to get dressed? And the child says, well, I like knowing that you were the last person to touch my clothes before I put them on.
Oh.
And the parent just melted. Absolutely melted. And so they started this new connecting routine where the child puts most of her clothes on, the parent gives the sweater a hug, the child puts the sweater on, and they're able to, the child gets dressed. And I might think, well, my child is old enough to be able to do the whole thing by themselves. They should be able to do that. What if we could get past that view of what a child should be able to do and instead see my child's asking for connection? Am I willing to offer a bit of connection through the task of getting dressed? And if so, we can get the thing done. The child can get dressed. I can move towards my sense of ease in getting out the door in the morning, and everybody's needs get met.
Yeah, what a wonderful story, very touching. What a sentimental reason, right? That the child is like such a deep sentimental reason, and all the parent sees is the defiance.
Exactly. Yes. And maybe, that was the issue for that one child. For another child, it might be, I don't want to be cold while I'm getting dressed. So I have a different need. I have a need for comfort instead of connection. Well, we meet that in a different way. Am I still willing to help you meet your need for comfort? Absolutely. Let's wait till the heater cycles and you can sit in front of the heater and get dressed. It doesn't mean we're not getting dressed. It means I can help you to meet your need for comfort in a different way than if you had a need for connection. But yeah, when all we see is that defiance, because we were trained, defiance is not acceptable, not okay. You may not say to your parent that I'm not going to do whatever it is you're asking me to do. That immediately gets our backs up. And if we can just kind of let that go a little bit, relax into that a little bit and say, what's really here? Why is my child not wanting to do this thing? Then that opens up the space to actually potentially even meet each other's needs.
Agreed. And how often, I mean, this is a hypothetical question, rhetorical question. How often a child will willfully be defiant? Like, chances are not that many. Very, very, very unlikely. I mean, people get stuck. People become defiant, adults alike as well, right? That conveys that we have a need. We can't communicate whatever that is, or maybe we haven't, as a child, I haven't figured it out myself, mommy. You're right. It's hard to convey the needs in words. But I think when our first response is to cut it out, don't talk to me like that, don't be disrespectful like that, it just changes the subject. The child feels more disconnected, misunderstood. I think we have to be the bigger person in this parenting game and not take things so personally, because let me tell you, it ain't about you. It's rarely personal. A willful defiance from a child, premeditated defiance, is very rare. Often it's a cry for something else. Often it's, I can't do this, it doesn't work for me, I'm feeling a certain way, or it's a need. And only if we can translate that and pass that, I think the world will enjoy parenting more.
Yeah, that's an absolutely critical point that underpins all of this, really, is that defiance is really kind of a last ditch effort for me to tell you, this is not working for me. I can't articulate it either because I don't have the words for it. I'm too scared to tell you because I think you're going to tell me, I don't care why you're not doing this thing. All I care about is that you do this thing that I'm telling you to do. I can't deal with any of that. And so the only tool I have is to dig my heels in. And of course, that immediately gets our backs up because of our history with our parents where we were not allowed to do that. So it's sort of this, this really negative cycle. And yeah, we are the ones with the fully developed prefrontal cortexes.
Supposedly.
Supposedly. And yes, it's hard because of all these traumas we've experienced, right? It makes it harder for us to be present, for us to think, okay, I'm having this thought that my child is never going to listen to me. They're never going to be able to do this thing. They're not going to be successful in life because I haven't instilled this skill in them, the catastrophizing. It's our job to think, okay, yes, I'm having these thoughts. These thoughts are not helping me in my relationship with my child. I can choose not to believe these thoughts. These things may not happen. If I didn't believe those thoughts, how would I show up knowing that my connection with my child is the most important thing to me? And when we approach things from that perspective, then it's like, of course, I want to understand what your needs are. I want to help you to meet your needs. And also, right, we should not neglect, I'm a person too. I have needs as well. I deserve to get my needs met. Let's find a way that actually meets both of our needs. And again, not those fake needs like control, but the real stuff that's underlying all of that.
Yeah, agreed. Number 6, your child cannot remember all the things you've asked them to do. This is such a critical point. Their working memory, their short-term working memory their brain hasn't fully developed yet. So what would you recommend in that case?
Yeah. So even if we're doing the same things every day, it's like, okay, go brush your teeth, get your lunch together, get your jacket, put your shoes on, right? We do the same things every day. Why can't you just remember? Because they literally don't have the working memory to be able to hold that many things in place at once. And so we can use one-step instructions, right? We can, okay, time to eat your breakfast. We're done with that. Okay, time to brush your teeth. Checklists can be really helpful. And I think that what's critical here is checklists are helpful if the child is having trouble remembering the tasks. A checklist is often presented as this one-size-fits-all solution. If your kid is not getting out the door on time in the morning, make a checklist. That's the way that you resolve this problem. That only helps if the child is having trouble remembering what are the steps. And then the child can see the steps or read the steps and mark them off and, okay, yes, we got through them. But if the child has a different need, then a checklist is not going to help.
I have one member in our authentic parenting community, Jen. She's amazing. During one of our support calls, her daughters are, I believe, 9 and 11. She said that she texted the tasks list that her daughter needs to complete, and her daughter was forgetting, right? And the mom doesn't want to nag. So she texted her, and the daughter said, "Mom, thank you so much. It was so helpful." And the daughter took care of the things that she was supposed to do. So, we don't have to just use beautiful pictures. I mean, you can even, with older kids, text your children, right? So I think that's another tip right there.
Communicate with them in the way they want to receive communication rather than in a way that's easiest for you to deliver it necessarily.
Yeah. Number 7, your child wants to do a favorite activity instead.
I'm telling you to brush your teeth, and you're still playing. Why aren't you listening to me? Right? It seems like it's about not listening. Actually, it's not really about not listening. They probably did hear you in that instance. They just didn't want to stop what they were doing. And so I think that we can really empathize with that, right? How hard it is to stop doing something that you're really enjoying doing. Is there a way that we can wait for a natural break in whatever it is you're doing and do it then? Can we make sure that we're doing these things on a regular basis so that you're not waiting am I going to be able to get my screen time today? No, your screen time is coming every day if that's important to you. We're not having to wonder if now is, if I have to get all the screen time I possibly can now because I might not get any tomorrow. And also I think if I really do not like to use logical consequences, which is where the parent decides on what is the quote unquote consequence of the action. But I think it's kind of flirting with boundaries a little bit when we say, if your teeth are brushed by 8 o'clock, we're going to have time for 2 stories, right? Because I'm sort of putting a boundary there and saying, I'm willing to read 2 stories if we start at 8 o'clock. Kind of on the boundary there between a logical consequence and a boundary, but definitely helpful in terms of, we're on the same team here. Can we work together to make this happen so we're done by 8 o'clock?
Yeah, it's a good one. I agree about boundaries versus consequences. Number 8, the child has been conditioned to wait until you yell. Yeah, this is a good one, a common one.
Yeah, right, because they know you're going to ask 4 times and then you're going to yell and then you really mean it. And so they can just ignore you the first 4 times and wait for you to yell. And then they got an extra 10 minutes of screen time or whatever it is they were enjoying doing. So I think that we can really look and see, well, what is the child doing? Why doesn't the child want to stop doing what they're doing? Is it possible that we can understand what that reason is and help them to address the need that they're trying to meet through doing the activity that they're doing? Maybe instead of saying it 4 times, get ready for school and then yelling, we could just set a timer so they can see how much time they have left. And then we don't need to do the 4 times. It's just at the end, we say it once and we move on. So a bunch of different ways that you could not have to ask 4 times, or you don't actually have to at all, that you can just ask once if you're doing it at the right time in the right way that the child can receive.
Yeah. And with older kids, you can even ask, right? What's your plan about this? Did you hear that I said we have to do this? Can I count on you? I ask my daughter often, can I count on you to do this by this time? Can I count on you to be done by this time so we can do this? It's so eliciting cooperation. It doesn't mean you have to say the same thing over and over and over again. They heard you, they understood you, they know what's expected of them. Oftentimes they do. Maybe they need a reminder. Sometimes I ask my daughter too, how do you want to be reminded of this? Do you think you need a reminder about this? I would be happy to remind you. No, I'm okay. I'll put the reminder on my phone, or I'll put the visual sticky note. You also want your child to take charge and be proactive and figure out reminders for themselves. What works for you may not work for your kid. Everybody learns differently. And so I think, like you said, being in their team and trying to help them and not condition them, with yelling. But this is a bad habit, I think a lot of people are struggling to break. Yeah. Number 9, the child feels judged by your language and repeated requests. This is a huge one. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I see a lot of parents struggling with this when we were new to working with more respectful parenting methods, and we're trying not to judge our child too much, right? We're trying not to say this room is so messy, which, if anyone were to say that to us, again, immediately gets our back up. We're not invested in cleaning the room at that point. And so when we start moving away from that, we start using language like I feel, but then we add the word like. And the English language is weird in that when we add the word like after the phrase I feel, where we get I feel like, and the next word that comes is almost never a feeling. It's almost always a judgment. I feel like your room is so messy. I feel like you never do anything to help, right? Is that I feel like really adds a twist to it. And once we have that judgment hanging out there, then it completely demotivates the other person from wanting to work with us. So instead we can try and come in with a non-judgmental observation. We can say, oh, I see toys on the floor, which doesn't immediately get the other person's back up and make them not want to work with us. And so that's sort of the opening to how we might move into different kinds of interactions, which we're going to get to.
I love the nonviolent communication for this reason, right? You convey, you start with I messages, what you observe, what your feelings are about the thing, and you express your needs, and then you make a request. I think it's such a good formula. And if anyone wants to learn, there are so many amazing free resources out there. We have covered it on the podcast many times. I'll put links to those episodes in the show notes. It's my favorite thing. It changes relationships. I mean, imagine if your partner, again, transferring this to adult relationships, came to you and said, I feel like you don't love me, or I feel like you don't spend time with me. It's like, ouch. But if you came and said, I want to be more intimate, I want us to have more closeness together, I want to spend time with you, it's a whole different thing. What is your partner going to say? No, right? It's more honorable. Yes, you're being vulnerable, clearly. But vulnerability is necessary for building that closeness and intimacy. I think if we switch that with our kids, I mean, I do this with my kid, and I can tell you, it's like magical. It's amazing. Yeah, it does wonders for your relationship, nonviolent communication.
It does indeed.
Yes. Number 10, you don't listen to your child, so your child doesn't want to listen to you. And children may say this outright to you sometimes. They say, you don't listen to me. You never listen to me. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah,
absolutely. And so if you're not feeling heard by another person, then why would you want to hear them and take on what they're saying? And then a related thing that I see a lot of parents doing when they, again, start to use these tools and they start to empathize with their child, which is what we want, right? We really want the parent to listen and to truly understand what are the child's concerns here, how are they feeling. And then the parents say, okay, great, I understand how you're feeling, and I see that you're super frustrated. Let's do this. And so we jump right to a solution. And the solution ends up not meeting the child's need, because we never understood what the child's need was. And maybe we didn't even understand what our need was, really. And then we're like, this stuff doesn't work. because understanding the need is so important. So yes, the empathizing is critical to bring everybody onto the same page, to say, yes, I get your point of view. And now I want to move into hearing what is your underlying need, without jumping right to, and the solution is X.
Number 11, you and your child don't understand each other's needs. Well, you're already speaking to that point. I think it's so important. That's why I have an episode. I identify 6 critical needs of children. I've done an episode, and it was among the top 10 most downloaded episodes of 2022. I'll put that in the link for the listener if they haven't listened to that episode. I think the needs is so important when it comes to human relationships, because all we're doing is we're trying to get our needs met. We choose ineffective strategies to convey or communicate our needs. That's the whole problem. And if we can understand our own needs, then and understand our children's, and children don't have like complicated needs. We may have more complicated and nuanced needs. We're adults with rich lives. But young children have really critical, basic needs. It's not that much, I think. And even if you fake it till you make it, you like learn and sort of try to guess. The way I teach my clients, I identify 6 needs and I help them with examples. I say, go home and like this week, work on identifying your children's autonomy needs. In what instances, like you misread, you misinterpreted, or maybe you guessed it, that it was about autonomy. And it's very helpful. Oftentimes people you have to work for that. It's not going to automatically come to you, right? Because we're not trained in this language, in this mentality. We're so disconnected from our own needs. When you ask, when you ask people, what are your needs? What do you hear?
What I usually hear is a huge misunderstanding of what a need is. And instead the parent thinks, well, my need, I just need 30 minutes to myself, right? 30 minutes to myself is a strategy to meet a need for self-care. And there are 100 other ways that you can meet your need for self-care that don't necessarily rely on you being by yourself. And when we can understand needs in that way, it opens up so many possibilities to meet our need and meet our child's need as well. And I think that's the really important part, is that we're not just talking about meeting your child's need. We're talking about meeting your need as well.
I agree. This is a fantastic topic, Jen. We can talk about this maybe another time, using those strategies. People saying that example that you gave, I need 30 minutes to myself. What are you trying to say in reality, right? Do you need, it could be a need for stillness, comfort. It could be a need for quiet. I understand it differently than you. When I say I need 30 minutes to myself, it could mean a completely different thing. I'm meeting a different need with that 30 minutes. It's so important to parse the strategy from the need and truly identify the needs. And what do you, I think let's use this moment to help the listener. Is there a way you found for yourself? Like, what do you do for yourself to identify what are you needing in this moment? Do you have a question that you ask, or tune into your body? I'm curious.
Yeah, a bunch of tools like that. An example that I love to use is a time when I picked a fight with my husband over not unloading the dishwasher, right? This is something that I would do routinely every flipping morning. I'm like, can you not just unload the dishwasher? And so I had sort of built up this story in my mind that he's lazy, right? And that he's not unloading the dishwasher because he's lazy. And so I can tune into my body and notice the tension and the tightness, right? When something isn't right for me, my personal signal is that I get this kind of really kind of sick knot in my stomach, really deep down. For other people, it will be shoulders or headache or a lump in your throat. We see it usually in the head and torso. that there's some physical sign that says something about this isn't right for me and I don't fully understand what it is right now. And then I can look to, well, what's the story that I'm telling about this, right? My story right now is that my husband is lazy. And then the question I can ask myself is, what happens if that's not true? Is it possible that's not true? Because I don't necessarily have to believe all of my thoughts. And that, even if I can't come up with, well, what's another explanation other than that he's lazy, it opens up the possibility there is another explanation. And then from there, I can potentially invite him into a conversation. And even if I haven't fully articulated my needs yet, I can open up with a non-judgmental observation, and we can talk about what are our feelings and needs. And then maybe I can understand he just likes an easier start in the morning, a slower start. He's willing to unload the dishwasher later in the day, right? But again, this is the single strategy I've chosen to meet my need, which ultimately turns out to be about collaboration in our relationship, right? This isn't about the dishwasher. The dishwasher is the unskillful strategy I picked to try and meet this need for collaboration. And there are 100 ways that I could feel like we're in a more collaborative relationship. And maybe some of them involve him unloading the dishwasher. Some of them have nothing to do with the dishwasher. Maybe he could take our daughter out to go and play at a park or something so I can work. So many other ways that I can meet that need for collaboration. And for me, it's sort of that iterative process of tuning into my physical sensations, of understanding what if this narrative I'm telling myself is not true. From there, can I understand what my real need is? And then can I make a request to help get that met? Would you be willing to unload the dishwasher every other day? Or would you be willing to help me by doing X? And then chances are he's going to say yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that personal example. I love it. It's a good one. And why do you have a need? No, I'm joking. For the dishwasher to be emptied in the morning in the first place, right? Could you wait also in the afternoon? I mean, sometimes
another perfectly viable strategy,
right? So like we are also stuck. We don't see our own patterns. We see other people's patterns. Yeah. Number 12, your child has a need for more autonomy. Hooray. Yes, this is huge. This is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this can be a challenge as our children get older. We sort of, our brains get stuck on what they were like before. and that maybe when they were very, very young, they didn't have such a need for autonomy, and they're getting older and their needs change. And we're like, but I haven't fully changed yet along with you. And so we're asking our children to do so many things throughout the day, right? If you think about how many of your interactions with your child are you asking your child or telling your child to do something, and how many of them are them actually making their own decisions about their own lives, and the number is massively disproportionate. And so I think that's where the common parenting advice to give 2 acceptable choices comes from, right? Where I'm pre-choosing in advance. I'm actually making the choice. Either of these 2 things is acceptable to me, and I'm telling you can pick. But what I have not done here is any work to understand whether these 2 choices that I predetermined actually meet any of your needs, right? Maybe I have picked one that actually does meet your need, and yay, we found something that works for us. But I may, not understanding your needs, have picked 2 choices that have no bearing on either of your needs. And then, of course, your child is still resisting. So is it possible that we can, once again, look back to the needs, understand what our child is really trying to do, and give them some actual say over things that are important to them in their lives? And what we will probably find is if we do that, the resistance decreases a whole lot. And then our need for ease, which is where we started this whole episode, gets met a whole lot more often.
Yeah, hallelujah. I love the sound of that. I think autonomy need is one of the big needs that I talk about as well. And so the last one is the child doesn't like being reminded. And I think we sort of talked about reminders. What else can you say about this last one?
Yeah, I mean, it's tiring for us to say, right? And maybe that should be a clue that it's also tiring to hear. Nobody likes to be told the same thing over and over again. And so I tend to find that a fairly simple reminder, something like I see shoes on the floor, is helpful. I have seen advice to just say one word, shoes, right? And that sounded good to me until my daughter did it to me. She was about 4 and she had asked me for some blueberries, and I hadn't gotten off the sofa yet. And a couple of minutes later, she looks at me and she said, "Blueberries." And it's like, you don't realize what the impact of receiving this is until somebody does it to you. And on that day, I stopped using the one word reminders. So so if the child doesn't like being reminded, then, yes, say what you see, but also, again, come back to the needs. Why hasn't the child done it yet? What need is not being met that we haven't addressed yet? And that's really the critical step there.
Yeah, and the cognitive development, I think cognitive skills is crucial, right? You already talked about that, the short-term memory, working memory, and all of those things. Understanding and helping our children. Children want to cooperate and behave and listen. They're not against us. They want to be with us. They love us. Except when we yell and behave in certain controlling ways, we actually create disconnection. And children may doubt our love, in fact. If the first thing from your mouth is, have you done this? Or the nagging or the constant yelling, imagine what your child is feeling or going through, or constructing a story about you, about them, about their relationship. I think it's crucial. I mean, it could be hurtful sometimes for us to honestly look at our own patterns. But if we want to create change, it starts with us. And I love that point, that it's very disproportionate, the amount of demands and requests we place on our children versus other types of interactions we have during the day. And a good way to be, I think, record yourself throughout the day. What comes out of your mouth frequently? What's your tone with your children? Or what are types of things that you keep asking your children? And I think that's a nice tool to analyze and look at your own patterns. I've done that before. I've recorded myself. And when you hear, you're like, oh, it's not pleasant the way we talk to our loved ones. And these are our loved ones. And yet we talk to other people. I always joke that this family I know, they have 3 children, and mom, can I get this? No, get out of here. Mom, can you know? No, stop doing that. You constantly want something. Mom, can I? The mom is like very impatient and reactive towards the children. And then the mom picks up the dog and goes, nobody you, sweetie. With you, mommy loves you. Come over here. And you're like, wow, this is really interesting. She's treating her children like a dog and her dog like a child. Not that we should treat our dogs or our pets poorly, but no. And our children see that and feel that, and they have such limited time with us, right? Let's all be so kind to meet our own needs and meet our own children's needs, and life will be easy. I think that ease is so achievable in parenting. I am at that point in my life that I do have a lot of more easy, flowy days than before. I can 100% say that to you. And I've done a lot of work to be in this place, right? Like the work was in the beginning of parenting, but now I reap the benefits. And I'm like, wow, this is an amazing relationship that I have with my kid. I don't have to nag or remind. I have a working relationship. Can I count on you? I called her from the road and I'm like, honey, me and dad are starving. We're coming home. We didn't get to eat anything. Can you put some water for pasta? I come home and my daughter made a pasta dish. I didn't even say, can you make pasta for us? I said, just, boil some water. You know what I mean? It's a relationship. And when children feel seen, heard, understood, they want to be with us. They want to please us. I mean, I don't like that word please us, but they do want to care and do nice things and kind things for us. I'm in that place that I'm feeling now, the rewards of parenting, as opposed to the beginning of parenting, where it was like, oh my gosh, when this will end, this is terrible. And so I would encourage parents to truly, truly do the work on themselves and change all the ill patterns and thinking that we bring with us into parenthood. And I will give you the last word to conclude this conversation.
Yeah, it's I think it can seem overwhelming to parents. It's like, another thing that I have to work on. Wouldn't it be easier to just keep doing things the way that we're doing them, even though it kind of sucks? I mean, among the parents I work with, the ones who really do try, and I think try is really the key word here. You do not have to do this perfectly. The perfection is not a requirement, but if you try consistently, things shift. Really big things shift. And your children see that you're making this effort, that you're trying to come towards them, that you're trying to understand their needs, even if you miss some of the time, even if you get it wrong, you explode at them, you disrupt the connection, even if all those things still happen sometimes, you're consistently trying to do things differently. And they know that. And they will start to consistently try to come towards you. And some of the shifts in children's behavior that I've seen is absolutely profound. I mean, in relationship with the adult, where it's not adversarial anymore. Even I interviewed two parents who were struggling with their children's behavior, just at each other's throats constantly. Start using some of the ideas we've been talking about here today, parent to child. And then it was the mother who was doing it primarily. Then dad is having a hard time putting the oldest child, the 5-year-old, to bed. And the 5-year-old saying, well, I don't want to go to bed. Well, go to bed. I don't want to. And mama would ask me what my needs are. So dad asks what needs are. Oh, well, I'm worried that I'm not going to remember what colors I want to use on my drawing tomorrow. Okay, so we write the colors down. Child goes to bed. Few days later, the younger child, the 3-year-old, comes running up, scribbles on the 5-year-old's paper. The 5-year-old says, hey, are you feeling as though we haven't had enough time to play today? And you want to play with me? And the 3-year-old's like, yeah. And they go off and play for 5 minutes, and they come back and they each settle down to their own different things. I mean, I have worked with so many parents who are like, my kids will not stop being at each other's throats. But when we use these kinds of tools with our children, they start to use them with each other. And then we get out of all of that refereeing, all of that stuff that's just so hard day after day. And our children begin to solve their own problems with each other. They bring solutions to us that actually meet our needs. And you're right, everything gets easier.
Thank you. Amen. Love those examples. Thank you so much, Jen. This was an amazing conversation. Truly loved my time with you, reconnecting. And I hope I'll get to speak with you again this year. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your time, your knowledge, and your friendship.
Yeah, you're so welcome. It was great to be here again. And so we walked through the 13 reasons why your child doesn't listen. If listeners would like to have a free PDF download of this, it's just 2 pages long. You can print it, stick it to your fridge. That's available at yourparentingmojo.com/authentic parenting.
Yay. Love that. Thanks.
You're so welcome.
That concludes today's conversation, my dear listener, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I really loved reconnecting with Jen after many years and exploring the reasons why your kids don't listen. I hope this episode will expand your understanding of children's difficult behaviors, and you'll get to refrain from asking, why doesn't my child listen to me? Instead, ask yourself, why am I feeling so challenged in this very moment? What am I needing to control right now? Why am I feeling helpless? If you want to get your hands on the 13 reasons why your child doesn't listen infographic, Jen provided a link. Go to yourparentingmojo.com/authentic parenting. Again, yourparentingmojo.com/authentic parenting and download it. I love hearing from you. I welcome your feedback, comments, and questions. You can send me a note to the email info@authenticparenting.com. You can call the number 732-763-2576 and leave a voicemail. And for international listeners, you can use the free SpeakPipe tool on the contact page of my website. Go to authenticparenting.com/contact and send me a message. If you want to connect with your fellow listeners from around the world, engage in meaningful conversations about the podcast, get support and answers to your parenting questions, join the Authentic Parenting community on Facebook, a private, supportive, and positive space for parents like you. If you need ongoing parenting support, I offer bi-monthly free parent support calls for the members of our community. If you enjoy the podcast, you can help us out by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. Your ratings and reviews help us get more visibility. Do you love the podcast and find it helpful? Show your support by becoming a patron on patreon.com. With a small monthly contribution, you can make a big difference. Join other active members who believe and support the work of authentic parenting. To learn more and choose a level of support, go to patreon.com/authentic parenting, patreon.com/authentic parenting. You can find the show and follow it wherever podcasts are played. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, and elsewhere. And finally, if you want to know what I'm up to in my private life, see behind the scenes of podcasting, get inspiration, and just stay connected, follow me on Instagram, the only social media platform that I use and somewhat enjoy. And as always, connect to the present moment, to yourself and your children. Until next week, I am Anna Seewald. Thank you so much for listening.